In this video, there'll be some drama and some heartbreak because I'll be talking about this brand new IronStar anamorphic lens by Sirui. This is such a unique lens, and seems like these days when there's a unique anamorphic lens, there's so much drama in the comment section. And I will say the heartbreak section for the end of the video. And as a disclaimer, Sirui did send this lens to me. However, this is going to be the usual pros and cons. Cons as in limitation you should be aware of, and I'm also going to talk about this right here. And as usual, we're going to investigate, is this truly 1.5x to squeeze? And add to that drama, we're going to briefly talk about Sony versus Lumix when it comes to anamorphic lenses. So let's get started. Hey, how's it going, guys? Hope you guys doing well. So I had this lens for about a little less than a month ago, and I use it in professional setting and in personal settings. So during this video, if you feel like you haven't gotten enough sample footage, I do have a separate film. It's like a little short video I made called Summer Vibes. That's gonna be like right here if you wanna check that out. And since I've been doing a lot of anamorphic lens reviews, I'm trying to step up the game each time I do these videos. So if you have any suggestions, let me know, but there's a couple more categories in this video. And as you can tell already, this video is in CinemaScope because I am doing a 1.5x squeeze anamorphic lens review over here. So I wanna make sure you get the proper, one of the industry standard formats as you're watching this video. And yes, I am filming this in an anamorphic lens. This is the Saturn 1.6 squeeze anamorphic lens on a Sony camera. So you're seeing that footage right now, and I totally randomly put a spotlight behind me on purpose, by the way, so you'll see that example come in handy later. First, let's check out some physical aspects about this lens, especially things you can't really tell from the picture. So when you first get this package, by the way, you're gonna shake it and it's gonna sound like, oh my goodness, FedEx has done it again. They have thrown my lens and it's in pieces. But it's actually, there's so much in here, it's gonna actually rattle. So what you get in this lens, you get an EF converting mount. So this is a user interchangeable mount between PL and EF. So that's actually really nice to have. And what else are you gonna get? And you're gonna get this. This case usually has a lens filter and you're gonna be like, oh no, it is definitely broken. No, it's not an ND filter or lens filter. Inside here is extra screw and a little hex wrench. So it's nice to have, you have extra screws unlike IKEA, you know? So it is very nice to have an actual fitting tool to open up your lens mount. So Sirui, thank you so much for including this. Oh yeah, and stickers in case you wanna bribe your kids. And finally, you have your lens along with a strap in this nice little case. Did I forget anything else? Oh, I did forget something else. Okay. See, Christmas morning, things just keep popping up. So over here, this is important too. They do include a couple more shims just in case you need to get that spacing right. So there's a couple of these along with the little manual. Finally, we can get to the lens. So check this lens out. All right. This, okay, this is one of the things I'm gonna talk about. The lens cap is stuck on the bottom. Okay. Put the lens cap back for now. So this is the 60mm version. They also have a 35mm and a 45mm, but I chose 60 because field of view wise, horizontally, it's gonna give me a 40mm look, and this is gonna give me the most anamorphic juice. All right, let me clear this away and talk about this lens real quick. All right, first things first, right away, when you look at this metal construction, you might be thinking, oh my goodness, that thing looks heavy. And it is, and it's not as bad as you think considering the size of this thing. So this is probably right around the limit where I can gimbal. So yes, I can gimbal this on Crane 4. So the 60mm version of this lens weighs about 1,044 grams or 2.3 pounds. And this focus gear, this is also aluminum, and this has 270 degrees of turn. And I have to say, the style of it and the feel of it, this does feel like the Blazar lens I just reviewed. Which also means that this little slit right here, yeah, if you get sand in there, that is gonna be a nightmare. So be careful with that. As for the aperture ring, I would say the focus ring is much more smoother than the aperture ring. The aperture ring has a little bit more stiffness to it, which I do like because you don't want this just spinning out when you're at f1.9, which is the only way to shoot this lens, really. Just kidding, we'll talk more about that later. But the first con of this lens, I would have to say, is this lens cap. Now, this is a early version, pre-production. I don't understand there might be a newer version out. In fact, I saw one with the little metal cap over here. So this thing pops out pretty quick. Now, the reason why it doesn't pop out as well as before is because I did put little gaff tapes on here, because without those, I mean, this thing, I could just blow this off. So yes, this is one of the first cons. However, I did like this after I fixed that issue because it is easy to take off. Whenever you're in a hurry, I'm able to just take it out and just shoot. And since we have this off, one more con of this lens. So the filter size on this is 92mm. I don't know if you guys ever had 92mm filter, but it is so hard to find. Now, it did end up working out for this review because every single footage you're gonna see is without any filter, which is good because you get to know exactly what kind of image this lens produces. But I am told that when you get a certain package of this lens, they're gonna include an ND filter possibly, so check that out. But yeah, 92mm, even a step-up ring is gonna be hard to find on that one. Which also means in terms of diopters, it's gonna be very hard to find a diopter that fits this. So there was that one shot in the short video I made for you guys. Yeah, that close-up shot, I was literally just holding up a diopter in front of it, just dangling. So just letting you know that's how I got that shot. However, I have to say, being 60mm, the minimum focus on this thing is not that bad, which is 0.7 meters or 2 feet and 7 inches. And that's how I was able to get some medium tight shots. And the last physical aspect I want to cover is gonna be this mount. So there's one thing I forgot to show you. I told you there's so many things in here. Okay. There's this thing right here. No, this is not a brass knuckle. This tool right here enables you to open up this back cap, which will reveal the back focus ring. So let me do that for you real quick. So there's 2 holes right here. You line those up and you unscrew this, and this whole thing comes off. Voila. And as you can see, it reveals this back focus adjustment. Now, as soon as you get this lens, if everything looks okay, I would recommend marking it. I did have a small mark right there. But if you need to adjust the infinity focus, you can do that. And I should probably mention that the infinity focus on this thing, when you spin it all the way around, so it goes a little bit beyond infinity focus. So I was able to get tack sharp infinity focus, but it's nice to know that you have a little bit of wiggle room there. And depending on various mounts and shim you can put on this thing, it's nice to know that you do have back focus adjustment here. And there's one more reason why you want to remove this cover. So I tried many different PL to E mount adapters, and first I thought it was the adapter's fault. So there's a brand named La Trader. So it's a pretty inexpensive adapter from Amazon, of course. And when I put it on this lens, it did not fit with this cap on it. And I thought, man, this brand, it is a Trader. It's not fitting. So I bought another adapter brand name Kasu. And I should have known, if you question Kasu, it's probably no good, and it didn't fit. And it also turns out it's actually this cap. So if you have this cap on here, it does not fit those 2 brands, or I should say 3, because this Viltrox one, this right here, also does not fit. So something to definitely know, because if you want the actual adapter to fit with this ring on it, you have to get the Sirui adapter. Yeah, I wish everything was completely standard, but if you want to match the logo color with the Sirui blue, you have to get this adapter. All right, let's talk about some important stuff like image quality. All right, so this is where drama starts to build up a little bit, because this lens right here is not your typical traditional anamorphic look kind of lens. The best way to describe this lens is modern day lens fused with certain anamorphic qualities. So as you guys can see, it's decently sharp at T1.9, and it does have slight softer edges. However, if you stop down a little bit, it does get sharper. In fact, it gets ridiculously sharp at T4 and above. This is where it gets kind of controversial, because anamorphic lenses, they're supposed to have this softness to it. But this lens, after T4, it's entering this like spherical lens territory. You know what else is ridiculous? Lumix S9. Yeah, that example shot was 6K open gate shot on this camera, which we'll talk about later. While I have this chart open, look at this distortion though. So rumor had it that this lens was gonna have barrel distortion, which I was really excited about, but turns out, yes, it has slight barrel distortion top and bottom, but on the left and right vertical corners, yeah, that's a slight pincushion distortion. So I don't think I can categorize this lens as barrel distortion altogether, but it's not as bad as this lens right here. So this Saturn lenses has very strong pincushion distortion on the edges. I did have to make a preset for that to ease that a little bit, but I don't think you need a preset to fix that. It's just very little. All right, so here's one topic I'm gonna start adding into my lens review, and that is longitudinal chromatic aberration. So IronStar 60mm that I have at T1.9, there's a little bit of chromatic aberration here. But being anamorphic lens, this is totally fine. Obviously, as you close down the aperture, it's gonna get better. But I would say around T2.8, it gets really good in terms of longitudinal chromatic aberration. As for focus breathing, there are some, but nothing crazy. All right, next we gotta talk about bokeh, another controversial topic when it comes to this lens. Now on paper, this lens has 16 blades of aperture, just like the Blazar Remus. So when it comes to smooth bokeh balls, this thing's got it. Now this is something I cautionally tested because my last review on the Sirui 40mm autofocus anamorphic lens, yeah, they had this hexagonal bokeh wide open. So I was really paying attention to this, and I'm so happy to see that bokehs are amazing. Now, some may look at that bokeh and say that is not oval enough. So that's the part that's gonna be very subjective. Let me know in the comments below if the oval bokeh is oval enough for you guys here. But I did want to take the bokeh test to the slight next level, and that is focusing on the close focus versus the infinity focus. As you can see, minimum focus distance, the bokeh is pretty smooth and everything looks normal. However, if you go to infinity focus here, there's some chromatic aberration around the bokeh. So if you guys ever see a bokeh test and there's a lot of chromatic aberration, you know why. All right, so the next topic, this is gonna be a fun one because it's gonna be about flares and the whole point behind this little spotlight behind me. So I'm gonna go ahead and mount this lens onto my Lumix S9 and switch the camera. And here it is, 6K open gate, goodbye my MacBook hard drive, but I want you guys to see this flare or lack thereof. So that's the thing about this anamorphic lens, guys. So the anamorphic element in terms of streak flare, it's very subtle. You have to get really, really direct sunlight into it to actually flare like that. Even that pretty strong backlight, I know it's kind of distracting, I'm sorry, but it's not gonna flare like it was doing it before. Now this particular lens is the neutral flare. There's a blue flare version also, but I have to tell you, I took this lens to a wedding and I tried to get some sample shot where there's a really, really strong backlight and I could not get this lens to flare that much. Now I do wanna do one more flare test with this lens, and that is gonna be testing the RGB flare colors. So depending on the coating, it's gonna react differently to, let's see, blue. So I'm just gonna go directly on that lens. Sorry if that's blinding you, that's blue. There's green. And finally, there's red. So let me know in the comments below how that looked. But one more thing I gotta talk about in terms of flare is this trailing flare. So this is also very subjective, whether this looks good or not, or very distracting. So this is gonna be very prominent when there's a strong light source hitting from a certain angle. So you don't see it all the time, and I'm not sure it's because of this. So I should mention that this anamorphic lens is a pretty unique lens in a sense that they put the anamorphic elements in the middle of the lens instead of the front or the back. So that might result in this kind of flare. All right, another new category for my anamorphic review video is gonna be anamorphic mumps and swimming effects. So right now, I have this on my Zeppelin slider. I'm gonna connect to the app and I'm gonna control left and right pan. Let's see how this effect does. Over here and over there. How does that look, guys? Am I swimming? Now on the chart, there's gonna be some obvious distortion here on the left side and the right side corners. So I know there's some, it's just that when you pan left to right, some anamorphic lenses have a pretty strong swimming effect. So from what I can see on the actual app, I don't see a strong swimming effect or mumps. So what do you guys think? So as promised, we gotta talk about if this lens is truly 1.5x the squeeze or the stretch. If you've been with this channel, you guys know that I try to really calculate this for every single anamorphic lens I review. So without going into so much detail, in short, pretty much, and it's also a constant stretch. So I tested minimal focus distance all the way up to about 27 feet, and I took several shots in between. And I can tell you guys, every single one of those shots had consistent stretch factors. And for this 60mm, the actual stretch factor is gonna be 1.51. So you guys know during post for the 60mm, you just have to stretch this footage by 151% and you'll have a very precise footage. All right, so let's talk about the heartbreak topic I mentioned earlier in this video. So I've been a Sony user since 10 years ago, before Sony camera were cool. So it was even a surprise to me when I purchased a Panasonic Lumix camera, S9 that is, because right now that camera is on sale for $1,300 and it does 6K open gate 420 10-bit. That is mind-boggling for me because this camera right here, even on that camera, that's A7S III, this is A7 IV. These can only do 4K 10-bit. It does 422 10-bit, and so does S9. That does 422 10-bit on 4K also. But the open gate section, that's what matters, especially when it comes to 1.5 squeeze anamorphic lenses like this. When I was shooting with my Sony cameras, I had to crop quite a bit left and right. Whereas in this camera right now at 6K anamorphic open gate, I'm barely cutting off the left and right edges. I broke my Sony fandom after 10 years of Sony cameras. So yes, it's a little heartbreaking for my Sony followers who've been following me for those cameras, but really, I'm gonna try to make both contents for now, comparing this camera versus this, because I don't know guys, Sony, I don't think they're gonna do open gate for a while. And that's another reason why I start liking PL mounts, because I can adapt to both Sony camera and Panasonic camera, so that's a plus. So if you guys want to hear what I think about Lumix cameras from Sony fanboy perspective, definitely subscribe, because my channel's not that big. If you go away now, I don't know you can find my channel again, guys. So I hope this video is helpful. Till next time, guys, take care. Till next time, guys, stay squeezy. Oh, Till next time, guys, stay openly gate.